What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Action Network podcast. I am your host, Evan Abrams, and today, as always, I am joined by the one, the only Action Network NFL expert, Chris Raybon. Chris, holy mackerel, it's draft week. How are you, man? What's up?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited. I think this draft is one of the more unpredictable ones in recent memory.
Yeah, this is a fun roller coaster, and we actually have someone else here along for the ride today. A very special guest joining us from the sports data and analytics company, longtime friend of the show, Sports Info Solutions. We've got James Weaver. James, what's going on? You can find all of his Sports Info Solutions, great NFL draft content from James and the whole team over there at nfldraft.sportsinfosolutions.com. I will repeat that again. But James, what's up, man? Welcome to the pod.
Yeah, certainly happy to be a part of the show here today. Thanks for having me on. Um, really excited to do one last breakdown here as we're within a stone's throw away the draft starting. So a lot of craziness going on, and certainly excited to break it all down with you guys.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We have tons of bets, tons of categories. But I will say this as of now, so people are aware, it is like 2 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday, April 23rd, day before the draft, because by the time this podcast gets out, literally anything can be changed since we haven't had a trade yet. And, I think we're all awaiting chaos. So I think it's clear to probably say that. But before we dive in, a reminder that we'll once again have our round one instant reaction episode on Thursday night, recording as soon as day one wraps up in Green Bay. We'll recap the round and, as always, look at day two props at the major books as they get released in real time. It is called the Michael Mayer special, as we hit that a year or two ago. So be on the lookout for that late Thursday night or when you wake up on your way to work Friday morning. All right. So this is our best bets episode. So before we dive in, I just wanted to go quickly through where the odds sit. Again, about 2 p.m. Eastern, day before the draft. I'm looking right now at FanDuel. But Cam Ward at the top, minus 20,000, hasn't moved. Not worth talking about. Keep rolling. Travis Hunter at the 2 slot has basically moved from minus 310 to minus 1,000 on Monday. Now about the minus 1,300 range in that 2 slot. And then Abdul Carter at 3 is about minus 700. The only interesting thing I would toss it to either of you on is the fact that Bet365 right now has the top 3 order exacta, which I hadn't seen at a few books. It's sitting at minus 550. Obviously, some high change there, but everyone seems to think that this is it. So does anyone have a problem with these three? Does anyone think that there's a possibility that it doesn't go 1, 2, 3? I'll take silence as
Yeah,
no one thinks it.
at
Cool.
this point, probably not. I mean, they're both all three of those teams have explored trades at different points, but the
Yep.
fact that there hasn't been a trade, it kind of speaks volumes because I don't think people really want to move up. So I do think that order is pretty set.
Cool. Moving on. Right. Oh, what were you gonna say, James? What do you got?
Yeah, I was going to say real quick, if anything, the Giants decided to slip in and shy away from Carter. They do have they do have Kayvon Thibodeau already. They do have Brian Burns, but I mean, best player available. It's been pretty much mocked that Carter's been going there. So things certainly can get weird if he slips by the 3 spot and they do decide to go to a Shadur Sanders per se. But I would be pretty confident that it's going to be Carter there at 3.
Well, everyone can remember that minus 550 line, so we'll see what happens. But at the number 4 slot, Will Campbell still sitting there. He's about minus 400. He's been in that range for days. Number 5, Ashton Genty. Favorite as of Tuesday night PM, he was minus 130. Now he's minus 135, so moved up a little. I think there's just an interesting point at the 5 slot because Mason Graham was favored there for a long time. Now kind of moving down the draft board a bit. I'll go quickly here. 6. Right now, Membu is the favorite Wednesday AM. Genty was the favorite yesterday. So I find that kind of intriguing. The fact that, if Genty goes early, the Raiders might be looking that direction. At 7, Ty Warren, now the favorite at plus 250. At 8, Jalen Walker, basically been sitting there for the Panthers for a bunch of weeks now. He's about plus 145. At 9, it's Michael Williams, plus 350, plus 300 range. And at 10, it's actually Ty Warren. So plus 360 sitting there as the favorite. So I think we're seeing Warren probably going earlier on the board than most in other drafts, at least in recent weeks. So that is kind of the steam. Okay. get out your notepads, pencils, phone apps, however you want to remember. Let's talk about some best bets. So with each of these, I'm going to let our guests go first. With this one, I just want to talk about top 10 odds. So let's go through some exact picks for bets, teams, players, basically whatever you got off the top here. James, you can start it off.
Yeah, so it's certainly been interesting to see the steam with Genty headed to the Jaguars. Like you had mentioned, he's now the favorite to go there now at 5. I think this brings in play a team like the Bears or another team down the road. They're looking for a running back to get ahead of them now to that 4 spot. There's been some rumblings about the Patriots wanting to trade back, get some more talent, get some more pieces on a roster that needs more oomph, I guess to say, with a new coach in Vrabel. So for a team to trade up to New England there at 4 and snag Genty from the Jaguars at plus 525 from what I'm seeing, I think that's certainly worth a little bit of a play there. Things get interesting. We've heard a lot of heat up now about there might be more trades than what we originally had thought in this first round. So let's get the party started there early and see someone get up there and get to the 4th overall pick to take Genty from the Jaguars.
Yeah, at least from my point of view, I had that on my list. FanDuel yesterday had a prop up on him to go 4 or 5 at plus money. Obviously, that is now gone with the fact that he's becoming favored to kind of go into that 5 slot. But I do agree with the play. Raybon, what do you think about that? And then you got a few plays here as well.
Yeah, I love it because I think throughout the process of the draft, we're always trying to kind of get that second most likely outcome whenever it's at a value. And I think that would be, Genty keeps creeping up the board. And, back in March, I think he was something like 100 to 1 or 60 to 1 to go to the Jags. And we liked it there. And now you got to pivot. So I do think that exact 4 is it's probably the second most likely option for him at this point because he just keeps flying up the board, or it's one of the other 2 most likely options. But I also, keeping with early in the draft, this is the time when you want to start at least listening to certain things you're hearing from, respected reporters like Adam Schefter. He actually did mention just in passing last year, Michael Penix could go as early as number 8, and it kind of caught everybody off guard. But this is that time. So one thing I noticed, he came out with a little intel earlier today, and he said Tyler Warren and Jahdae Barron are the 2 guys he's kind of hearing to the Jets. So you could get Warren at about 3 to 1, so still some pretty decent value, and then Barron at 10 to 1. And you probably also want to look at him for first cornerback drafted or something like that. But really, that's like even with Will Johnson. But you could get him 10 to 1 to go to the Jets, and that's when I really haven't heard anywhere else. But again, Shefty did have that little nugget about Penix potentially going 8. So I'm gonna just sprinkle a little bit on what he's talking about with 7 because I really haven't heard that anywhere else for the Jets. And then I think if you work backwards a little bit, we like Genty to go in the top 5. Mason Graham was widely expected to go 5th to the Jaguars. I still think he's a very good player. I think he's one of the best players in this class. So if Genty for some reason is off the board and the Raiders are still sitting there at 6, I think they would go Mason Graham. So I like him to go exact pick number 6. You could get that about plus 650. So Graham at 6 plus 650, and then Barron 10 to 1 at 7, as well as sprinkle some on Tyler Warren. He's 3 to 1 to go to the Jets at 7.
So I think you've nailed the interesting part of the draft, at least for me, which is Mason Graham at this point, because he was supposed to go 5 for so long. Now I think we're kind of seeing this Genty push into 4 or 5, which could push Graham back. So I think 6 is the right call. I think 8 at 9 to 1 to Carolina. Like we've been assuming Walker there forever. I think defense, maybe pass rush. They were looking at linebacker. Makes some sense. The other thing I want to look at is at 10 with Chicago. I think Schrager talked about a potential trade in his mock, but I do think something like Loveland at 650 or 7 to 1 at that 10 slot, because I think Loveland, if Warren gone, becomes an interesting, because I've liked him forever, an interesting stab for a team, especially in a trade, and I kind of like it at that 10 slot. Graham's 14 to 1 at that 10. I think 6, 8. I think there's a few stabs to make at him specifically because of him moving back from the five. The other thing I'll mention on Graham, he's about minus 350 to go over 5.5 when you talk about draft position. At Caesars, he's actually plus 280 to go under 5.5, while he's as short as plus 160 to go top five. So the under 5.5, literally the exact same bet at 120 cents higher at plus 280. So something I found kind of interesting. I wanted to pass along. The other bets I loved, but they're kind of gone now. Kenneth Grant first round, I hit at minus 250. It's now 390. And I took Amos first round at 250, now 135. The other one I kind of wanted to run by you guys, Abdul Carter and Ty Warren, both to go top 10, is a special at 365 at minus 175. Does anyone kind of, I mean, it's a little juicy, but if we both believe that Warren is, say, 7 or 10, feels interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll talk a little bit later about the tight end things, but yeah, can certainly see Carter and Warren both heading top 10 there. I guess real quick to talk on your Mason Graham point.
Yeah.
SIS, we have him as our second rated prospect behind Travis Hunter in terms of his consistency, his physical ability on the defensive line. So if he falls past that 5 and all the way down to 10, I think that's going to be a big steal for one of those teams down at that lower end of the top 10.
And I should mention with the Bears, I think a lot of people, like, there's a lot of uncertainty with the Bears as well, because everyone thought it was going to be like Gentry was going to fall earlier. And then when it looked like he was going to go top 5, top 6, probably to the Raiders, then Tyler Warren became the popular pick. So I actually, Evan, to your point on that, Carter and Warren top 10, I probably wouldn't go there personally, just because it's already juiced up. And I think the Bears are a big wild card, and I think there's a strong possibility that they may continue to beef up the offensive line. I know they already made a bunch of splashes in free agency, but I'm hearing they could be in the market for whoever that third tackle is that slips, if a third tackle slips. So Banks has been the guy. Or maybe Membo, even if there's a lot of hype with Banks even kind of climbing the boards. But I do think if there's a tackle there, they're going to seriously consider that option as well if Gentry is off the board. And Warren might be off the board already too.
Yeah, I've got Banks and some top 10 stuff we could talk about later. But let's get to the next category. Order of draft position. So first wide receiver, second cornerback, things like, seems like we really like this category across the board, each of us. So I'll let James start it off here. I love this direction. So I'm completely on this, Ben, and I've taken it already. So James, start it off.
Yeah, as a Penn Stater myself, it kind of pains me to have to do this, but I think Colson Loveland here to be the first tight end taken at plus 250 has some value to it. My colleague Bryce Ross wrote a really good article breaking down the two of them, their similarities and differences, and they're in terms of Loveland's ability to get downfield, be more of an open field target down the field. He's a better separator than Warren is, a little bit of a better run blocker. Where Warren shines really is with the ball in his hands and kind of things close to the line of scrimmage, get him some yards after contact, get him to run over some guys. But Loveland's no slouch there either. And I think these guys are pretty similar and to what you're looking for specifically in your tight end position. If you're looking for like that traditional down the field pass catcher who can line up a little bit more in the slot, can line up more as an F tight end, Loveland's right there. So if there's a team like the Colts who last year had the highest ADOT of targeting a tight end down the field, and you're looking for a guy to get open more on that route, if Warren were to fall, if both those guys were to fall that far, obviously that'd be a little tricky to handle now, but Loveland might be a better fit for them there. And so if you're looking for, like I said, that better separator, that better route runner, that might have a little bit of an edge to Loveland. So teams like the Jets, teams like the Saints, if you're looking for more of that specific pass catcher role and more traditional style tight end, he might be a better option and a better look for those teams.
Yeah, I'm invested. So I did it a long time ago, so I get it. I think Raybon, I'll let you go next because you have some different thoughts, I think.
Yeah, I disagree on the Loveland hype. I think it's more media created, and I agree. I mean, you watch the tape and you could make the case that he's better in a lot of ways than Tyler Warren, but everything we've been hearing from NFL teams, and like I said, even Schefter today is talking about Warren 7 to the Jets. And it's just Warren keeps rising on boards and reports, and Loveland's not really in that same boat outside of, I feel like, us prognosticators. So I'm fading that. I think Warren is still chalk to be the first tight end taken. And the way I would play that, you can actually make some fun skill position parlays. So you can do 3 chalk and then contrarian for the 4th one. So for example, you can do one where you got Hampton as the second running back after the first running back after Genty. You got Tyler Warren is the first tight end, and then you have Shedeur Sanders as the second quarterback, or the first quarterback after Ward. But then instead of going with McMillan as the first wide receiver, you go Matthew Golden. And you can get about plus about 5 to 1 on that. And then if you want to do it with McMillan going as that first wide receiver, but instead go Jackson Dart as the second quarterback drafted, you get about plus 700. And then if you want to do both, you get to about 13 to 1. So really, you can bet on a lot of chalk and just make like one pivot with the skill positions. And I think one of those 3 I mentioned probably will hit. So that's how I've kind of approached it. But I'm a lot more confident in Tyler Warren, just based on what I've been hearing from actual reports and just the way the teams are looking at it. But I do understand why people would fall in love with Loveland, no pun intended, as well. But I haven't heard enough. Where as opposed to a guy like with Ted McMillan, you're hearing like everything's all over the place, and you are hearing some doubters and some reports that some teams, barely have him in their top 50. Whereas, so I could see a guy like Matthew Golden jumping McMillan, even though McMillan's odds are getting shorter because you had that hype a couple of days ago about him, potentially going in the top 6, which I think was just damage control after the, barely cracking the top 50 news. But I haven't seen as much with Loveland, and the same thing with the running backs. I think there's maybe an outside shot Travion Henderson, but for the most part, you're hearing, Hampton as that number 2 guy after Ashton Genty.
Yeah, Hampton's my pick there. At second running back at minus 320 at 365. I just don't think there's a chance Henderson jumps him. Right now, Hampton has a lot of hype, and I just think there's a lot of room. I don't think he goes ahead of Genty. And I just think that spot is kind of locked in, and it should be a little bit higher. So that was
Evan,
definitely,
you got to listen to the fantasy flex with Matthew Friedman, because he made the case. I didn't agree with him, but he made a case for Hampton over Genty. So
if that happened, if that's the way the bet loses, rather than Henderson jumping Hampton, I have to be fine with it, because that's just, give it up to the Oracle for that take. But that's one of my picks. I think the other one I would be looking at now. Listen, call me crazy because every mock pretty much goes against what I'm about to say, but I still think there's like room for a dart throw on the first offensive lineman not being Campbell. So I see 9 to 1 on Membu and 30 to 1 on Banks. I just think a trade, and it's also New England in that 4 slot, and there's just so many different options there. To me, I think it's worth a sprinkle. The other one was the bet on Graham kind of moving out, and Michael Williams potentially going 9 with him going 10. So second defensive lineman taken in the draft behind Carter being Williams at like 4 to 1. I thought was interesting, but you're kind of making the case for Graham, so maybe I'm a little shy on that pick.
You guys ever watch sports and find yourself wishing there was a way to get into the game? With Underdog, there's finally a way to make picks on sports without leaving the crib. The game is in your hands. To play, all you got to do is choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats. We're talking touchdowns, strikeouts, points scored, all that good stuff. They got all your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. You can create entries of football picks. You can mix and match across other sports as well. You can play with as little as $1. And if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So you would turn $1 into 1,000 just with your sports knowledge and Evan's sports knowledge and James' sports knowledge and my sports knowledge. And y'all know I really, really love playing best ball on Underdog as well. That's already been up and running, and can't wait till the draft gets underway, because then we'll really know exactly where a lot of these ADPs should be. We're kind of just guessing some of these rookies right now, but love Underdog. Everybody should go download the Underdog app and sign up now using promo code Action Network to unlock a special offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash, bonus money whenever you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up with promo code Action Network. Claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash. That's a lot of bonus cash. And you get it instantly upon your first deposit. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado. For some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY.
Yeah, it really gets a lot of fun with best ball after the draft. Can't wait to kind of have everyone in their slots and their positions and start listening to you for everything fantasy, Raybon. All right, best bet, category 3. We got 2 categories left, so we're going to be sticking with position stuff here. We're going to do over-unders. And these are mostly, I have a few conference stuff, but they like cornerbacks, running backs, wide receivers. So, James, you can go first. I love this. I've already bet it myself, so hit it up.
Yeah, certainly wish I could have probably got a better number than what I'm going to put out now. But over over 8.5 defensive linemen and edges taken in the first round, currently a minus 275. Evan, I know you said you got a better number earlier, which is definitely a great play to have. I'm looking at the end of this first round. I'm looking at the Commanders. I'm looking at the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Lions, the Ravens, and all of those teams could use an edge guy. And when you look at the top first 20 picks, you're already looking at a solid 7 to 8 guys. They're going to fit in that range already. Your Carters, your Derek Harmons, your Walter Nolans, and even Kenneth Grant now, who's got some serious buzz and moving up some boards there. So looking at either like a James Pierce, a Donovan Ezeraku, an Nick Scourton, all I need is one of those guys to get in order to get me home over the 8.5 there. Mike Green's been falling a little bit, but I still think he's pretty solidly in that top 20 from a lot of the mocks that I've been seeing. And all these guys are real solid. A lot of these guys have good traits to them, and a lot of them have been linked to these teams. And yeah, especially like these teams at the end of the draft. Pass rush is key. Pass rush is prominent in today's NFL. So grabbing these guys as early as possible, I think that's what gets this bet over the 8.5.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I got it at 150. It's still 275. I still think there's 3 players that get you from 8 to 9 or 8 to 10 at the end of the first round that'll probably get in. And I kind of think the same with linemen as well. I bet the over at 5.5 at like 2 to 1. It's or 1 to 2. It's now like minus 300. Raybon, you got a bunch here. What do you like?
Yeah, so kind of going off what you guys are talking about, I think the way to approach a lot of these positional over-unders is to fade offense in general, because I think, it's kind of that fantasy effect a little where, everyone knows more of the offensive guys. And I think they're a little inflated. I mean, right now you're still seeing in most mock drafts, 2 to 3 quarterbacks going in round 1. That we're hearing that could be as little as 1. We're hearing Shador could fall to round 2 and everyone else as well, except Cam Ward. So, and then, running back, Gentry's going early. Hampton probably is going round 1. Not a lock, but almost certainly. And then even wide receiver, it's Golden and McMillan, but we're hearing McMillan might not even be in a first round grade for a lot of teams. So what I'm doing, I think one of the positions I totally agree on edge and D-line. Another position I think could end up benefiting is cornerback, low key, because Hunter counts as a cornerback. So over 4.5 at plus 260 at bet 365. I think Hunter, we talked about Barron, Will Johnson. Those are the three locks. But I think you could see guys like Hairston and Amos. But I think you could see both of those guys go maybe even in the top 25. I've seen mocks with, I think the consensus mock spot for Hairston is like 23rd, and then Amos is 26th to the Rams. They got the Packers in there. You got teams willing to kind of move around a little bit. So I think corner could benefit. And then on the flip side, I'm going under 2.5 running backs in round one. So just expecting Genty and Hampton, or maybe a surprise, maybe it's Henderson, but not expecting teams to kind of rush out and draft running backs after Genty, just because I do think it's a deep class. And then wide receivers, kind of the same thing. We're kind of already hearing, there's like some people think Golden's the best guy in the class, and he's kind of getting a lukewarm response. And then McMillan, we hear that he's also getting a lukewarm response from certain teams, and it just varies. So I'm going under 2.5 wide outs as well. That's at plus 235, so you get some nice juice on that one. I know a lot of people have Emeka Ibuka kind of going late in round one, but I'm not necessarily sold, because I think round two and day two is really going to be the offensive skill position day. You're going to have your teams start making moves for quarterbacks that maybe we thought were going to go earlier. I think you're going to see a run on wide receivers, and I think it's a deep running back class as well. So you're going to start seeing some teams make some moves there. So I think round one is going to be a lot more defensive than people may think. So going over cornerbacks and under on running backs and wide receivers.
I love the cornerback call. I have like Amos and Revel. I think have a chance at the early first round. Revel's like 3-1. So I was going to talk about my long shots, but it's the same theme. So I'm kind of all about it. The one thing about your wide receiver, you might even get better odds soon. So Schrager's mock has Ibuka going 20. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think it's going to move the market. So you might see a little bit of a better number there. That's the earliest I've seen him in almost any mock. And then you talk about the running backs. I love that, just because we talked about it earlier, Hampton going 2 and then Henderson falling out of the first round. It's kind of what I see, so I'm agreeing with it. The other prop that I'm on is SEC players. I see this at minus 190. Now the record is 15, so it's 14.5. It's basically to tie the record. I think they do it. I'm not going to go through every number there, but I bet it, and I believe they get into that 15-16 range. So I like SEC players first round over 14.5. Any thoughts there, guys? We have one round left. If there's no thoughts, and it's just dart throws. So what are we thinking?
Real quick on the running backs.
Yeah.
I was real close to going up against you guys there and taking the over. The Commanders scare me a little bit. So I talk myself into that thinking they're probably going to end up going that defensive pass rush, but they're not locked into Austin Eckler. They've kind of been back and forth with Brian Robinson, and to bring on a Trevion Henderson into that offense, he has that explosive ability. He has that 3-down potential. He is able to pass block and is a pretty solid is solid in pass pro. I can see the Commanders potentially taking a chance there. I just couldn't see if in order to make that bet, I needed to find like another team or two in order to be like, oh, this makes sense for them. But I just couldn't find it. But that was just like an interesting nugget that I had on the running back side there.
And I do think that would be a great fit. But the thing to remember about the late first round is that a lot of teams know, start of the second round, you're going to have Cleveland again, you're going to have the Giants. So a lot of teams know like that quarterback market, that wide receiver market is going to heat up, and running back is deep. So even if teams like Washington may end up taking him, but they may trade back. Like I think it's going to be more possible to trade back in the back half for some of those teams too, which is another reason why I'm kind of fading skill position offense in round one, because I think that's where you're going to see kind of teams move up to get I think there could be a run on cornerbacks, like you guys said. There probably is going to be a run on edge rushers, things like that. So I think teams are going to kind of want to maneuver into those spots for that, and O-line too could be a factor.
Yeah, for sure. I think this running back class is certainly really deep. So trading back, using some of that capital in rounds 2, 3, 4, to get some of those guys that are there in that back end, like an RJ Harvey, like a Tootin from Virginia Tech, they
Love
can
him.
definitely bring that value too. So, yeah, certainly makes sense.
To James's point, Commanders 11-1. Looks like take a running back in the first round. So that is an interesting stab if we think that's Henderson. If I could take under 2.5 and then stab at the Commanders, that's an interesting look at that. All right, guys.
How's stabbing?
I know dart throw, but let's go. Let's go to dart throws here. Parlays. Call this the circus. This is basically. I mean, this draft already is a little wild compared to recent years. I was talking to James before we got on the call here. I just think past three, everyone's kind of throwing up their hands and giving their suggestions on what they think is going to happen. But I think that probably allows for some fun bets. So this is take it how you will, James. You can start first, but anything long, anything fun.
Yeah, so jumping on that wide receiver market a little bit, we've obviously heard and have seen the odds shift in terms of whether it's going to be Matthew Golden or Tet McMillan as the first receiver taken, and obviously everyone's looking at the Cowboys there. So I kind of want to take a stab. I want to take a dart throw at where Tet McMillan's going to fall. I'm taking a look at the odds board here on the specific team that's going to draft him. Obviously, I see the Cowboys at the top of the odds board there. And then you have the Jaguars and the Panthers back to back who come in next. I really think the Jaguars is a smokescreen to get people off the Genty or even the Mason Graham case. And then the Panthers, I really feel like they're going to be going defense or a different way with their pick there in the top 10. So taking a look at teams like the Seahawks or the Cardinals or even the Packers who have a Christian Watson coming off a ACL injury that might be taking that need another downfield threat for Jordan Love. You get these teams, the Seahawks at plus 850, the Cardinals at 17-1, the Packers at 25-1. If he falls and gets past that Cowboys spot there, there's a lot of teams within that range that might be looking at his services saying he's too big of an athlete to pass up on. And there's some pretty solid numbers there. I'd rather do that than take, the over under. I don't know exactly what it is, but whatever his over number is in the draft round, and just throw those darts at those exact teams.
That makes sense to me. I mean, McMillan, I'm not going to waste mine because I have a few long shots that involve him as well, but I do think the volatility there offers an opportunity. Raybon, you've got a bunch of parlays. Hit me.
Yeah, well, I already hit on them. Just real quick, again, you go with the chalk skill positions, except you pivot on one, or the real long shot when you get about 13-1 is when you go Dart as the QB2 over Shador, and you go with Matthew Golden as the wide receiver 1 over Tet McMillan. But what I'm going to talk about here is I think going back to Ashton Genty, we talked at the top about, what draft slot, right? And it's climbing. But the teams, I think there are a couple of teams that I think are very undervalued for him. Now, the first is the New England Patriots are 10-1. So that's another way to invest. But I think the one team that I've heard is actively trying to trade up, and I can only imagine it would be for Genty at this point, is the Denver Broncos, because everyone's already mocking the number 2 running back in the class, Amari Hampton, to them. So they got their tight end Evan Ingram. Sutton, they're gonna bring Sutton back. Marvin Mims came on really strong last year. They drafted Troy Franklin. Vele had a better than expected year. So I don't necessarily think it's a wide receiver that Denver's trying to move up for. I think it's Ashton Genty because running back, that was the glaring weakness. And so they're 17-1 to take Ashton Genty. I think that's a great bet. And another one is, and this one, it's longer, but I wouldn't rule it out necessarily. We've heard the Cowboys are trying to make some moves, and they're already at 12 and being mocked the top wide receiver in the class. So what would they be doing trying to move up? Maybe it's for a quarterback, but I think Genty 29-1 to Dallas is kind of interesting as well, because we've seen them take a running back early in the draft before in Ezekiel Elliott. Jerry Jones has had success doing doing it, and they need like a star like that. And I just think he's going to be so high on everyone's board. And the one thing about Dallas and wide receiver is Dallas usually goes best player available, and if they're trying to make moves, I think Genty would definitely be a target for them too. In general, I just think anyone in that front, early to mid first round trying to move up, it's probably going to be for him. Much more likely for him or just those top three guys than it is for anyone else. So I think 29-1 in Dallas and 17-1 in Denver for Genty. Great. And then some more realistic ones that are still pretty good odds. You can get the Giants to draft Shedeur Sanders at plus 350. Now, he's widely mocked to Pittsburgh, but it makes no sense because Pittsburgh has Pickens and Metcalf, who are complete mismatches for Sanders' skill set, right? He's not the greatest outside thrower. He's a guy who, he's gonna want to target the underneath routes a little more and things like that. They need more of a stronger arm guy, which is literally anybody else. So and they're plus 175. They're the favorite to draft Shedeur Sanders. The Giants have done the most work on him, and there's a very real chance that everything we thought was going to happen in round one after Cam Ward at quarterback just happens around like 2 instead, and the Giants just end up getting Shedeur with their second round pick. And I think Jackson Dart is going to be. I think the Saints are going to go after him heavily. So I hear they're really in love with him, and that's why they probably aren't in play for Shedeur. So it all kind of sets up to go with a kind of an obvious pick that's now being given at long odds. Giants plus 350 on FanDuel for Sanders, and then Jackson Dart plus 250 to the Saints, I think is actually more likely than that. So those are two that are pretty realistic, but still have some decent juice.
Well, I definitely like one of those since I bet it myself and it was going to be one of my long shots, which was Genty to the Broncos at 17-1. Best price. You already see them being mocked as for some trades. They want a running back since it's been Hampton for weeks there at that slot. I think it just makes sense. Now it's time for me to butcher some other names here because it's not going to be this one, but I think McMillan is an interesting. Listen, some people have him out of the first round. Some people have him as the best, athlete wide receiver. So I do believe that there is a chance here at a dart throw. So he is plus 230 for top 10. I don't want that. I took it at like 5-1 or so a few weeks ago or a week ago or so. I think there's a better bet here, which is 18-1 to New Orleans at 9 and 25-1 at whoever picks at 10. If it's going to happen, I think it's probably either a trade up or something in those two slots. So to me, that's an interesting throw at this point. I also really like, and again, time for the butchering of the names, JT Tuyamolo, the offensive tackle. He is 8-1 to get into the first round, 32-31. I think there's, again, an opportunity there. The other dart throw we talked about with the over 4.5 cornerbacks, I think Revel at 3-1 to sneak into that back half of the first round. And then this is the Matthew Friedman special since all he does is talk about Hampton, but I kind of agree. I think there's an opportunity to take a few shots here. So directly at Minnesota, say he falls and, Denver trades up for Genty and whatever. I think 11-1 at that 24 slot for Minnesota is intriguing. And then top 10 is 26-1. And if you want to take a little bit of a lighter bet, under 19.5 is 3-1. So I think Hampton just has some opportunity to move up. He is a great graded running back. Genty might go super early in this draft, and there's other teams looking for running backs. I was curious, and I know James likes Loveland as that first tight end, but Hampton first running back, that's not Ashton Genty. Warren first tight end, and then Grant to go in the first round is minus 110. It's basically, take your money back. I think that's a decent bet in terms of pretty short odds, in my opinion. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a solid way. I think that's a solid bet. like Chris mentioned earlier, the information coming out about Warren definitely trumps the kind of the personnel and breaking down the skill level
Sure.
at this point in the game. So that makes sense. I love Kenneth Grant.
Yeah.
I think our scouting site we classify him as a dancing bear for how big he is as a size and how slippery he is with his footwork down in the trenches. So he can rush the passer, he can take over an offensive line, he can slip into those cracks to get get running backs down in the backfield. So I certainly love the Kenneth Grant play there. And then yeah, on Hampton, you know when people start comparing him to Genty, you hear about he has less tread than Genty has, and he's probably a better pass catcher than what Genty is. So when you hear those people taking those shots of saying, "Oh, that Hampton is going to be the better running back than Genty," and he might get taken ahead of Genty, um, what's for those that are real big dreamers out there. Um, those are kind of those things, and I think he's clearly the second best running back in this class. I did about the Henderson love there. If you're passing on him, if you're passing on Hampton to take Henderson, I think that's a mistake. I certainly Hampton being that next running back to Genty.
I agree there. I'll give you one long shot as well. Super, super long shot. So obviously Raybon likes Golden first wide receiver. He has talked about that. I still think there's an opportunity for another offensive tackle to jump Campbell. So say it's Banks. And we've also talked about it's Loveland top 10. So Golden first wide receiver, Banks first offensive lineman. Loveland top 10 is 665 to 1 parlay together at FanDuel. If you flipped Banks for Membu, just say we didn't get that one right, it's still 242 to 1. So obviously 3 complete utter long shots, but I think in this type of draft anything is possible. Those are 2 of my dart throws.
And let me just say this, because I do want to be mindful of, again, I think all of us kind of trying to predict the draft. I've noticed we've mentioned, a lot of McMillan, Loveland, Warren. Like there's a lot of focus on the skill players, and sure. I would encourage people to kind of think around those to try to find some long shots. For example, a site like FanDuel lets you parlay up to 8 players to be a first round pick. And so they have, probably everybody from like Hampton on in that range. No, even sure, Sanders, like pretty much everybody that has a chance to fall. There's odds. And again, I think there's a very real possibility that just as a community, we're kind of just inflating the skill player values because, we're all doing mocks and we're all trying to figure everything out. And I think we're all enamored with, the skill guys, but there's a very real chance that it's just trenches and defensive first round. And so if you can parlay up to 8 guys to go in the first round, just skip over every skill guy, like skip over Hampton, click on all the defensive kind of fringe guys, mid 20s, guys like Grant, guys like who else? Hairston, guys on that fringe. Pierce is a guy like everyone's expecting him to fall, but he was going in the top 5-10 at one point. So I would encourage people, when you're thinking about your parlays and you don't really have much to lose but a lot to gain, kind of think around the skill guys a little bit, because we know these NFL teams are not they're not thinking necessarily the way we're thinking. Like I think there's a lot of love for Genty. There seems to be some love for Tyler Warren, but a lot of the other skill guys, I think it's more we're kind of matching needs with teams and guys there. But again, there hasn't been a trade yet, so we don't really know what's going to happen. But I think that's kind of the way, a really good way to attack it, that you're going to get some value on, because everyone else is going to tell you to just like, it's going to be some type of bet that includes like a tight end or a receiver or running back or a quarterback. It's like, I'm enough of this McMillan shit, and like I could just like all these guys, like just give me some tackles and some big guys, man. Come on, go. So yeah, that's the way I would attack it, parlay wise.
Well, I was going to ask for the guys' final thoughts, but that is definitely Raybon's final thought.
So, James, am I banned? Yeah. Am I going to podcast? Yeah, I was like, nah, yeah, that's your final thought, bro. It's over.
But yeah, truthfully, at this point, I feel like we haven't seen chaos because there's been no trades. And I think some of us are trying to create some chaos because
Yep.
we assume something's about to come. So it's an interesting point. But before we get out of here, James, any final thoughts here? Any predictions? Anything you're, looking for, in a sentence or two?
Yeah, looking forward to seeing how these quarterbacks fall. I did a
Yeah.
piece on breaking down Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, and Jackson Dart there. So it'll be interesting to see how those three guys shake out. And then I'm really excited to see what happens, honestly, starting at 3 with the Giants. If they really do go with the Shador or pass on an Abdul Carter, I think things get super wild there at 4. I think, those teams at the back end of the draft that are the Super Bowl contenders. You look at a team like the Eagles that have 20 draft picks over the next 2 years stacked up, ready to deploy in some use case. Could make things really, really interesting. So, yeah, just excited to see how these trades fall, how those specific big name quarterbacks fall. And yeah, like Chris said, I'm always a big offensive line, defensive line guy. So super excited for this draft.
I think 3-4 for me is where I can't wait for it because both the coach and the GM for 3 and 4 are literally in opposite directions. 3 is trying to save their lives while 4 has done a ton this offseason. So it's interesting to see what they do there. So to me, that's where the draft starts, and that is where we get out of here. So for James, you can find all of his work at Sports Info Solutions. Great NFL draft content at nfldraft.sportsinfosolutions.com. Great work out there. We are going to be back as well. So that's it for today's show. But before we sign off, another reminder that we'll have our round 1 instant reaction episode on Thursday night, recording as soon as day 1 wraps up in Green Bay. We'll recap round 1, and as always, look at day 2 props at the major books as they get released in real time. So be on the lookout for that late Thursday night or when you are on your way to work Friday morning. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I am Evan Abrams. That is James Weaver. And as always, Chris Raybon. See you guys soon. Enjoy the draft.